Welcome to the third episode of the Public Humanities podcast with our guest speaker.
I'm Rob Baker, Professor of Political Science here at Wittenberg.
Could you start us off with a brief introduction of yourself and your position here at Wittenberg University?
Sure. As I said, I'm a Professor of Political Science. I've been here for 36 years, and I teach courses in American politics. A lot of those courses are subnational stuff, state and local politics, urban politics. I teach public administration, and I teach our methodology course.
How does your position interact with the humanities?
Well, my discipline actually owes its existence to the humanities. Political science, as a social science, emerged out of the humanities disciplines of history and philosophy. And so we wouldn't exist had it not been for those two disciplines. I use those disciplines quite a bit in the way I teach my courses. I cannot teach urban politics, for example, without talking about the history of how cities emerged. We can't talk about the human condition without looking at literature. And so the novel by John Edgar Wideman, for example, Philadelphia Fire, talks about one example of many issues in cities where groups that feel like that they've been discriminated against have pressured city government to try to do things that city government didn't feel like it wanted to do. So using that novel as a way to sort of talk about the modern kinds of protests that are going on is a good example of that. Also philosophy, ethics, philosophies of democracy, all of those philosophical texts come into play quite a bit in all my classes, actually. My public administration class, ethics certainly undergird questions about how should administrators behave, how should bureaucracies interact with the public, those kinds of things. Those are all questions that flow out of philosophy. The humanities, help us understand the human condition and how we interact with each other and what our communities mean. So meaning is developed, I think, to a great extent out of the humanities traditions.
What role do you see the humanities holding within the community?
Well, as a political scientist, I have to say it's the humanities disciplines that are under the greatest stress right now. And people may not know this, but all the complaints about teaching of critical race theory, for example, the complaints about which books ought to be banned and not banned. I mean, those are all those topics are topics that have come out of the humanities, and people don't recognize that. And as I said, those disciplines are the ones that really help us understand the human condition. And I think it's not surprising then that it's those disciplines, the basis, the foundation of those disciplines. History. How do we teach history? What does history mean? What about literature? Should we, how much should we allow literature to be available to all ages, for example? What is appropriate? Those are all political questions from my perspective, but they're political questions because the foundation of the humanities disciplines are at stake.
And lastly, how can we increase the humanities presence within our communities today?
Well, I think that for a lot of people, it's not even clear to them that the humanities are front and center. Those are the disciplines that are causing the most controversy in our communities. Not the disciplines per se, but the topics that those disciplines deal with. So making it clear to folks that the essence of how we think about the human condition is really at the heart of what the political controversies are that we're seeing play out today in American communities. So making it clear that that's what's happening, that we're actually fighting over those kinds of things is, I think, something that's important. But also to recognize the importance of the positive contributions that these disciplines have made to those kinds of questions that we constantly are wrestling with. So having humanities professors and those who are specializing in those courses provide expertise to the community, get members of the community to come to lectures, do the kinds of things that this new institute is doing. I think all of those are very helpful to raising stature of the humanities in the community.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on as our guest speaker.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good luck.